And do you want to do questions now or go on to the next? After. Okay. So it's truly my pleasure to introduce Dr. Aaviksoo, who is the Deputy Secretary General for E-Services Innovation at the Ministry of Social Affairs in Estonia. I get that right? Good. He oversees the digital transformation and innovation of social security in Estonia, including health, labor, and social matters. He is currently chairing the mHealth Working Group of the European Commission's eHealth Network and is the Vice Chair of IC Permed and Chair of mHealth subgroups of eHealth Network. Dr. Aaviksoo is also lecturing at Tallinn University of Technology and Medical Faculty at the University of Tartu, and did training at the University of Tartu and at Harvard. And there's just a lot of other stuff in here that is fantastic, but I think we should just get right to it. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Dr. Aaviksoo.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here and an honor. David, I spent yesterday already a great day, my first day ever in Canada, in Toronto, and I am so sorry I have to leave on Friday evening, but I promise I will be back. The invitation was received with positive surprise, and when we got engaged, so what is it that a place we just heard about one institution here in Toronto and full of other like that could possibly want to hear from a place very far away. I've learned some people know where Estonia actually is located. I'm going to show you it on the map. But then we decided, okay, I'll tell you a story. And this is not a fairy tale. Some of you have approached me and told, well, Estonia is like an e-Narnia. And believe me, I'm going to tell you a story. This is real. This is also the reason why I'm here, standing a real person. And also, I think you can do it, and I hope we can do it, some of those things together. When I talk about innovation, what I mean is that it has to be applied. So it can be already existing knowledge. It can be brand new knowledge, but it has to be applied. But just doing cool stuff also isn't enough. So there has to be some competitive advantage. And we discussed with, just before with some of you, what this competitive advantage should be. It could be what the value is perceived. So it could be breadth of the services, it could be efficiency. That is then the decision that those who are innovating, or together with philanthropists or the government, but there has to be something which gets better out of this application. Now, future healthcare will be strongly influenced by digital approach. And we have heard that already, that, okay, there is possibly a drive and expectation to be more effective, getting things right, getting patients and citizens better, but also to be efficient. And on the left-hand side, you see that, okay, what the guys developing all these digital tools are promising is that you can personalize. And believe me, if people are sold soda with sugar and a name on it, they expect healthcare to be as personal as their blend of soda. Data-driven discovery, again, we heard already, this is coming. And prediction, again, all coming. Well, in between, yes, we usually measure what the qualities, what are the new solutions, and improved coordination, but also, and that is now an important part, that it changes very much the relationship and the way how the care is actually delivered. Again, some good examples told here. Patient active participation, being themselves care delivers, and location-free care provision. And well, this is actually part of the paper we prepared from Estonia, and I'm a little bit running ahead with the last bit of my presentation, that in addition to having this Chief Information and Innovation Officer role in Estonia, Estonia also, the whole country, is for 6 months running Europe. So we have this strange concept in Europe that every 6 months, one European country is chairing all the policy meetings in Europe, and that is called EU presidency. Sounds very cool, actually a heck of a lot of work, and our local policy making for 6 months is on pause. But when you seize the opportunity, what a chairman of a meeting can do, well, we cannot pursue a specific agenda except setting what is on the agenda, in what order we take the things that we discuss and want to get things done in Europe. And Estonia has chosen for the second half of 2017 to talk about digital, to make free movement of data, what we just heard, as a fifth freedom in Europe. So if we do have a data, be it for healthcare provision, so increased access and safety in healthcare, or sustainability of health systems to analyze what works, to compare different countries or regions, or also what we heard, to develop new services and products. If that data does exist, we should make it usable. So it is a valuable source of innovation, and it can hit the triple aim. So I hope, and I every day talk at least to one person, more or less, to try to tell that this historical notion that technology per se will drive up costs in healthcare anyway. So if you guys are telling me, we have this digital solution, well, we don't have money. We should get that part at least away from the table from the start, because digital solutions can deliver value, but also keep the systems more sustainable, because we can change from treating or providing just the care units, and we can actually start measuring what we are doing, and then agree in the society whether the investments we're putting in there are worth it. So what gives me the right to tell you about these things? Some of you might know, is that now comes the Estonian story part. Some people have said that Estonians are strange, and if you type in the web address estonia.ee, this is what you find. So this is, if you are small, if you are living in a rough place, either geopolitically or climate-wise, you have to do things differently. And that's what we have been doing. So this is the tiny spot. Yes, 1.4 million people. Land size comparable to Denmark or to the Netherlands. And we are as integrated as you can ever think of. So we try to find a lot of friends so that we don't have to be afraid of anyone. ICT sector is very important. Now, Estonia is doing certain things right, it appears so. And it does converge to making public services digital. And it is a combination of political wisdom and visionary wisdom. Also engineering and happy and hardworking people. The internet is a social right in Estonia. I mean, really feel bad, and as soon as I get here, first my data roaming went, I consumed all of that within the first 24 hours here, so I need to find otherwise to do that. I didn't know that, but in Europe, one problem, for instance, is that the cost of having access to fast-speed internet, so across different platforms, Wi-Fi, 4G, in the Nordic countries and in Estonia, it costs you about a day and a half salary. There are countries in Europe where you have to pay a month or even 6 weeks salary to get the same fast access to the internet. So it is very important that you have this infrastructure, which makes possible this free flow of data. Yeah, we do have electronic ID, and well, some people say, is that actually secure or safe? Well, you know my name, right? I'm Aaviksoo. It's difficult to pronounce, but if you practice, you get good with that. But maybe for others, it's easier to call me by my number. I know that by heart. This number is my name in the digital world. It is no more secret than my true name. If I write my name on a paper and then we agree on something, then I sign that with paper signature, Honestly, I do that only when I have to, get reimbursement for my flights to Brussels, because in Estonia we only sign it digitally, which means that I have this digital number and then my two-factor identification and PIN code. And there is nothing more than that. There is no miracle in that. We wouldn't be able to do that in healthcare domain if it were just the healthcare vertical. So that is one thing it is important to understand. It started all with banks providing just good services to people, together with tax authority from the government side, and it followed to the level that we currently, you can't get married and divorced online, and you can't sell your real estate online. Everything else you can do online. And by the way, you all can sign up for e-residency in Estonia so that you can do all those things online as well. Seriously. Now, well, the numbers are counting. There are 3 billion requests made already. 27 million requests done within 1 month for 1.4 million people. So it is happening very fast, and I'm going to show it is only starting. Now, what does it take to deliver? On the left-hand side, you see the things that we just heard. There are here in Canada, in Ontario, actually anywhere. So there is lots of information from various sources. There are powerful information systems. There are smart people who can, figure out what does that mean. But there is one thing that I believe is also needed, especially when we talk about healthcare, and that is trust. People do need to trust that their data, which they can't see, is used by somewhere, and especially you need to convince your lawyers that, well, this is trustworthy. And how are you going to do that? Well, what we have done is that we have just, service by service, area by area, proving that it works, it is nice, it is cool, so that, again, it is not a miracle. There are not strange people living in Estonia. As said, taxport and parking, X-Road, which just is secure data exchange layer. I'm going to show a bit techie picture also in a second. Digital signature, ID card, e-land registry, internet voting. Since 2005, I have only voted in internet. I try to usually be abroad because this is so cool. This time I was in Geneva 2 weeks ago when I cast my vote for the local elections. And my guy actually got in, and I was happy about it. Mobile ID introduced, and it continued with 2008. We had our e-health system, which is a nationwide system where any doctor can see lab results, doctor's notes, diagnosis, prescription data from any other doctor. And by the way, patients can see the same information. So we are in the same information room with physicians. E-prescription started in 2010. And now with e-residency, and you can do such a cool stuff as putting the whole government into cloud in embassies across the world. So whatever happens physically on the ground, we are not afraid because the country will not disappear as long as there is a bit of internet somewhere floating. So it is possible, and yet you can enjoy your life because you just know that these services are trustworthy, and I'm going to show why is that the case. Sorry, this was supposed to be. So there is one sound principle. So if I have an address which some government agency or say one of the healthcare providers knows, and I go to another one. So first they present me with the information they have already. They don't ask me. I can change that if, for instance, for that specific region, my address should be different or any other information. But in principle, it is mandated by the law that you do not build information systems which repeatedly ask people the same things that you already know, you as a country. It is digital by default. It's truth by design. So the system is built on transparency. Transparency means that I can see who has access to my data, and I can control the use of my data either by actively giving informed consent, which is so easy digitally. It is so easy. It was complicated on paper, but digitally, we just heard how many mobile phones there are. There are TV sets at home on people. So there are different ways how you can actually connect and reach out to people digitally and ask, do they like that? Or in some cases, it is open by default, specifically if my doctor's notes are being made available to another physician. But I can, if I want to, close that data as well. So there is embedded trustworthiness in the system. What you need for that, and these things exist anywhere, is a legal framework, which I'm not going to go into detail, but if you're interested, all the legal framework is available in English as well, combined with the technology and then wrapped together with the way how this is actually put into practice, which is called data governance. And the actual combination or the content of each of those components can be different in different countries and settings. And also, you know, as the technology evolves, some of the things that with the old technology wouldn't be possible, now they are. So again, you can then adjust what you allow and manage in the law. And blockchain technology definitely is one of those things that enables us to do things differently as compared to what we were able and dared to in the old times. So it is constant improvement based on combination and well-coherent combination of these things. So this is this techie picture. It's a busy slide. The only message here is put on the title in bold. So what we started differently from many others is that we started from the beginning in integration. So the purpose of having your data being available for others to use has been the cornerstone. As said, for healthcare, but all other sectors. So imagine that you are a patient and then you have your GP, your cardiologist, maybe your clinical psychologist, maybe a social worker, maybe a home health nurse. And there is a group meeting. We just heard that most of the good clinical decisions these days are made in teams. And you can summon the team into one room, and then they all can discuss your health issue. And then the GP understands, okay, the home health nurse will take care of that part, and the clinical psychologist says, well, this is my role. Everyone exchanges the information about you, and this is perfectly fine. As soon as these people step out the room and sit in their offices, for some reason, we cannot create the same kind of information exchange so that they could support your health the best way they can. Well, you can do that in Estonia, and that is the beauty of the system, that it is role-based. It doesn't mean that any doctor or any other professional can see your data just because they can. It is, and I think I will come, yeah, this slide should have been earlier. So it is built on the fact that the data belongs to the data subject. So there is no question. If there is information in the hospital and I want my GP to see that, I can warrant that data to be transferred to my GP, and vice versa. Or if there is a company who offers a nice app to monitor my blood sugar and they need some of that data fetched from the health system, also they should be able to do that. And if I give them that permission, which is the control part. I can delegate that access rights to others, and I already referred to this individual monitoring bit. This is very important. Effectively, every Estonian can police over the government. It is not just the Department of Data Protection Agency who we have to trust that probably people are doing the right thing with our data. I can log on, and 30% of Estonians do that now regularly, to a government-provided site and see who has accessed my data for what purposes. Police officer, pulling over for speeding, that happened once. And I had forgotten that. And 9 months later, I thought, there is a police officer looking at my files. And I called what was the case? And then it told, oh, you had this speeding, not big one, but yeah, it was right. I paid my fine. The next day, I had forgotten that. But this knowing that these things can't happen with unnoticed does what? It prevents systematic misuse. And that is what, over the time, has generated this trust. That, yes, we have had single police officers or nurses or physicians who have looked at the data that they didn't have right to. By the way, if they would have done that on paper, we would never know that. But since they did that digitally, they got caught. Some of them lost their job. There were criminal charges, lost their license. So everybody understands that, that this can't happen unnoticed. By the way, criminals have saying that don't do any cybercrime in Estonia because you will get caught. So that's also a positive side of that. So this is the trust bit. And with this slide, I wanted to show that the green line shows the number of information that is made available through this health information exchange nationally. But you can see that at some point the number of actual use, and don't pay attention that much on the left-hand side, absolute numbers. The story here is that the more information you have, the more inventive people actually become and start using them. So it was slow start, people, it was like having a fax machine, right? Only you in the world. There was not much people you could exchange information, and people were complaining, you know, why did you build the system? Now we have a situation where we need to change all our ID cards because one large company sold the Estonian government the crappy ones. So yes, we do have different kind of new issues, and people are really worried that, you know, they will lose the opportunity to use digital services for 24 hours. So that is, of course, what you have to bear in mind. Once they get used to that, they are addicted, and they love that. Now, what we are doing as a next step, so how does this bring in the innovation? We have already genome bank, and so 5% of adult population have given, that's the left upper corner, they donated their blood, and that has been either sequenced or genotyped. And that genomic data, using this system I just introduced, is connected with every possible bit of their health data which you can find. Family medicine practices, hospitals, different population registries, disease registers. And then this is being analyzed. It has a powerhouse of research currently. They publish, I believe, on a bi-weekly basis in Nature and Science. But what we now realize that, well, we need to put this science into practice, to start innovating. As said, it's an implementation to get the competitive advantage. So both national and international investments are pulled together, and we are rolling out our nationwide personalized medicine program to test the feasibility and value in clinical environment. Talking about probabilities between doctor and the patient isn't something, at least I was trained at the medical school. I don't think many medical schools do that today. So this will be a very different kind of discussion they're having with the patients. Also, payers need to understand, you know, how that changes their dynamics. So what it is, what will happen in the clinical environment if it's not a pilot but a nationwide implementation. ICT infrastructure and innovation ecosystem, pretty much what you described here that was built. And then what you can do. The red line is when those samples were collected, so when patients were enrolled to the genome bank, and now you can, you know, have their disease trajectory with all those information. What you can also do is you can go actually back in time. If you find something interesting that happened in the future, but probably that was planted there by something that happened in the past. So this is what you can do. Second thing, you can start finding solutions even for complex diseases. We know that the genetic prediction, well, probably has been oversold because it's easy to track single gene mutations and then figure out what to do with that. Usually either not much or it's extremely expensive because to develop a drug specifically for a small group of individuals is very expensive. But you can also start thinking about a risk-based approach to prevention or categorizing diseases also in the smaller clusters. And this has been done based on the work in this genome bank. You are also entering totally unknown territory. You can start finding things you don't know what to do with. For instance, it was more or less a random collection of just blood tests on the left-hand side down. Glycoprotein, albumin, VLDL, particle citrate. And it predicted, as is shown here on the right hand in the bottom, 5-fold increase in probability of dying, with not reference to any specific diagnosis. We just know that these people have something in them. So ethically, what do you do with it? It was a research project. At that time, we didn't know the identities of those patients. Assuming that you are doing it in the way that the vision is for the future. Do you tell the people that, you know, we know something about you, that you might die, but we don't know actually what it is? You have to be careful with that. Okay, one idea is you can monitor them. Or you don't tell them exactly because the usual medical ethics will tell you, you don't tell people about the risk if you can't actually do anything about them, just to make them more concerned. Or you have to find somewhere in between, and some people might want to know and some others don't. So we are, you know, entering a territory, and hopefully we can do that together with you. We need to find solutions to these kind of questions as well. But I don't think these should prevent us from doing those things. So back to the trust part. The thing that we have currently, 5% of population who have donated their blood and have the genotype connected with all their health data. And the next year, the government has already decided it will be 15%, and hopefully if we can give funding and then add similar support from the private sector, this number is predicted to be at least 50 to 60%. Why we think it is possible? It is because the trust has grown over time. It wasn't that we started with hooray by everybody that, oh, I want my genome and my health data to be connected. It was some people who usually are early adapters, but others have seen that actually it works. Neither researchers, nor the government, nor the private sector has misused the data. There hasn't been any big data breaches because, by the way, it's easier to lose your USB stick or a computer. But if it's built in this federated, decentralized data system that we have in Estonia, it is much more difficult to lose that information, which hasn't happened, and also to break in there. That's another story that I might give to you if you want some other time or later on, how you create this security part. So next year we will roll out precision screening for breast cancer and precision screening for cardiovascular diseases for high-risk patients. So we add this genomic information on top of the normal or usual risk prediction that we have. And yes, we are working to bridge this gap between the clinical world, which is embracing digital technologies, using all the health information and using care support decision algorithms, and they get better. And yes, if you measure then how those algorithms work, you can feed back and get your algorithms better and better with each of the cycle. But equally important is the knowledge flow. This data lake has been recently introduced as a new term, that you synonymize that information, and well, the Estonian numbers, as said, would be probably around 500,000. We're working to get a European similar kind of data lake possible, and that is then to find new patterns. But currently, how you recruit patients for clinical studies is very different how they come to see the doctor if they have a clinical ailment. And a lot of people are scratching their head and trying to figure out, if you don't know exactly what the research is going to be at the time when you collect the data, how you make agreement with the patient. There are broad informed consents. There are ideas such as, in some cases, the ethics board can give this authorization. And a nice idea being developed in parallel in England and in Estonia is that if the research is being done with the individual's data, and you report them back, say, every year, which we can do currently, even if it has been anonymous format, but we know which data has been used for which research. So we report back people that, okay, by the way, you have contributed to this research piece. To the extent that we can then link that even, you know, to the publication. So people can be proud that they have contributed to the world-leading research, and then at some day, some of us can be part of a contribution to a research that leads to a Nobel Prize. So engagement with citizens can be in different forms, and I think we should work here. And then, very last 5 minutes on what the Estonian EU presidency is aiming at, so that the collaboration between Canada and Estonia actually effectively would mean collaboration between Canada and Europe. So digital single market is the core strategic goal. Yeah, everybody knows that the future will be digital, and implementing that in the digital health domain, is the cornerstone. So most Europeans, and I hope you know this for Canada as well, but again, just last week, still there was a conference when somebody raised a hand and asked, well, do we actually know that people want the data to be used digitally? Well, yes, they do. At least on the right-hand side at the bottom, 70% in Europe want. Of course, we have to take note of those 23% who are yet not confident enough, which means that the solutions have to be flexible. We cannot deny those services that I just showed to you from Estonia and in many other countries as well to those who want to use them. And over the time, we have to win over those 23% who at this moment are not yet willing, but most probably, if we do our work and task prudently, will come with us. At least this is the experience we have had in Estonia, and I can't see any other reason which it can't be repeated in other countries. Then there is data protection and privacy issue, right? Some of you might know, at least in Europe, everyone is afraid. In May next year, new data protection regulation will set in force, which means that effectively across Europe there will be one data privacy law, which overrides the national legislation for that. And it says very simple thing. It says that the data belongs to the data subject. So they have right to know why this data was collected, what is happening with that, and they can have control over that. Now, the privacy in this meaning, at least for us, doesn't mean that you have to secure data from being used, because that is the safest way, but actually to make it used securely. So the question if should be replaced with the question how. And I'm happy to say that with the discussions we've had over the last 3-4 months in Europe, this tiny or slight change in the attitude is actually happening. And so the principle that citizens are in control of the data is possible to be implemented across Europe, which also means that companies who are developing services can take that all 500 Europeans can have access to their services. Within this 6 months period, we focused on actually implementing this citizen control. I gave some examples from Estonia. A very interesting idea by the Dutch, which I still think I have a minute to tell you, is that in 2011, the Dutch civil service has prepared a national health information system, long-term preparation, a lot of money spent. And 2 months before rolling it out, the parliament flushed it down and said, well, this won't happen because we won't have centralized national information system mostly for privacy and security reasons. Go figure out something else. And what now they have worked is, and they will roll out this starting from next year, and it will be promised to be operational by 2020, consists of 3 components. First, all healthcare providers, which are private, by the way, in the Netherlands, are told that you cannot possibly provide good quality healthcare if you are not using the data about the patient from their earlier encounters, and if you're not capable of sharing the data with others. Because good quality healthcare data assumes that you take note what is known about the patient. Second, the government will provide the rules, what is the exchange standards, and what information needs to be exchanged, so that what information has to be available is also defined by the government. And then they tell to the private sector that, okay, you then provide us with the data brokers services, which then people can choose whom they trust to identify themselves and gain authorization of shifting that data from one place to another. So there are different settings who apply this, the solution different ways, but it is possible. We had a conference, successful one. There is a digital health society set up with then broad stakeholder declaration, but most importantly, specific task forces working for the solutions that then governments which are willing to implement, if not all 28, then at least first part of them can start implementing. Interoperability standards, legal framework, or also the change management, what you need to do together with the engineers, policymakers, and then clinicians together. And well, you need also political support, and in December, I have every right to believe that very strong political demand by ministers, so politically nominated officials across Europe will demand for digital solutions in order to support sustainability of health systems, to make it more patient-oriented, to invest into infrastructure, and also to make it available for research and development in a secondary use format. So I welcome you in my last slide to join the Digital Health Society. There is really a very practical and pragmatic way to contribute through those task forces to learn what has been done by the leading countries, not just in Estonia, but others in Europe, but more importantly, what we, and I hope you can contribute with your experience and make public sector as good as the private sector is, using the global knowledge into their domestic implementation of policies. So thank you very much. We know in Estonia, as you, that in the end, the summer will always come. And that's what keeps us, working through the hard winter. And thank you.
So I think we have time for questions. If there are any, I'd be happy to receive them, and I'm sure my colleague would as well.
So that was my text. Can a Canadian register for an Estonian ID? I mean, this stuff goes right across borders, and it's illustrated in your activity with the EU. I mean, the paradigm here is that infrastructure is global immediately. What are you seeing from a global interest in using that infrastructure? Because if you go to somewhere in Estonia for healthcare, they're going to have an ID to register your data to. I mean, that's how it's built. So you're going to give me an ID for sure if I'm just traveling. So why couldn't I just keep using that ID and get better healthcare record access through that architecture?
Does this work? Yes, it does. Okay. Well, the use cases could be multiple. Inside Europe, for instance, the Center of Excellence for Rare and Complex Diseases is the first and very simple one that a tiny country with 1.4 million people cannot possibly provide all the treatment for every disease. And at the same time, to have this very specific part of your treatment process, provided in that Center of Excellence means that prior getting there and also the aftercare has to be possible in other occasions. Increasing number of people are traveling, either for work purposes or for leisure. But also increasingly important is the research collaboration. And smart people are thinking ways how you can use also federated data systems, which means that you don't have necessarily to pool all the data where the number crunching takes place, but you can actually bring the algorithms to the data. So that, again, I said I've followed carefully how the global multinational companies are working everywhere and then getting the best knowledge, to pursue their goals. And we in the public sector should actually start using the same opportunity, that both the knowledge and collaboration using data will not be hampered by national borders.
I think there's another question.
Yeah, I have a question around governance, and I just believe that's one of the biggest challenges around managing the data. Are you using public cloud to do that today as far as managing and sharing that data, or is it more in a private cloud scenario?
Currently, mostly of that takes place in the public cloud, but there is the first version of a PPP cloud which was set up, which then means that there are 3 domains. One is purely public, so with the very secure information management processes. One then is quasi-public and private, so it could be provided by public providers, but under the control of the public agencies. But then the third part would be the purely public cloud, but again set up according to the rules and regulations set up by the government. And then this will be all made available to different private sector and public sector providers, which they can choose according to their specific service to use. And as said, it won't be bound just to Estonia. The data embassies would actually broaden that globally.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any further questions? David?
So the individual can clearly log in with their ID. Are you collecting outcomes from these individuals? Are they reporting? How are you driving that engagement? Are we getting patient-reported outcomes through the same framework?
Yeah, currently the patient-reported outcomes stand in separate silos, so the healthcare providers themselves can collect that. And again, the Finns probably are a little bit ahead of Estonia, even though their first version of combining those 2 worlds wasn't too successful. But we are implementing the similar kind of solution that you can have side-by-side patient-reported data and then the medical data, but they are not kind of merged immediately together, but then clinicians can choose what kind of data and by what standards they do trust as clinically valid for them. Again, but this option is provided by the government.
Yeah, thank you, Avi, for a really interesting presentation. I'm Rifat Atun from Harvard University. I had the privilege of working in Estonia for many years on health system reforms. One of the challenges we had in relation to data was ability to link health service data, utilization data, with mortality data due to ELOs. So we cannot really ascertain outcomes just linked to David's point. Has that problem been fixed, or is it going to be fixed? So we can now access it. Yes?
I think that's also available here because we can link our health outcomes data through the Institute for Clinical and Evaluative Sciences, or ISIS, to identify mortality data and link it with the existing data that we have. There's no issue there.
And I'm aware of that case, and honestly, we also have in Estonia lawyers, and in some occasions, what you can actually do, sometimes it's easier just to say no, whereas. Yeah, but that specific case has been solved, but also for many other similar kind of situations, I think we found the solution, and this now runs on a kind of routine basis.
Good. Okay, thank you very much.